Right, dimming the lights and queuing up the projector. Tonight's deep dive, it's 1922, F.W. Murnau's um, Nosferatu.
Oh, Nosferatu, the original vampire flick, huh?
You got it, yeah, the OG. Everybody always says it's the first real vampire movie out there, based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, but, well, they had to change a few names. Copyright issues, yeah.
Right, right. Those pesky rights.
Yeah. But for this deep dive, we're checking out a recent review, and get this, it gave the film a straight up A+.
Wow, A plus, huh? For a silent film, that's got to be saying something.
Exactly. And it really got me thinking, like, why? What makes Nosferatu still so captivating after, what, almost 100 years?
Well, there's definitely something about those early films that just grabs you. It's often compared to like 2001, A
Mm.
Space Odyssey. They both kind of revolutionized their genre. They had this huge impact.
Interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're not just watching some creaky old horror movie. We're like picking into the origins of the genre itself.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, Nosferatu basically invented the horror movie playbook, right? Those lurking shadows, that creepy atmosphere, the slow build of dread. It's all right there.
It all kicks off with this, like, totally normal real estate guy, Hutter. He's off to Transylvania to meet, his new client, the mysterious Count Orlok. But here's the thing. The reviewer points out this classic horror trope, the ancient book warning, right?
Oh, yeah, I can't forget that one. You see that everywhere.
Right. So Hutter, he stumbles across this book, and it basically lays it all out. Everything about vampires, their powers, how to, stop them. But of course, he just laughs it off, tosses it aside. Classic.
It's interesting, isn't it, that that dismissal, it says a lot about how people react to the unknown, especially when it's scary.
It's like we just don't want to believe it, right?
Mhm.
It's easier to just, I don't know, bury our heads in the sand than to actually face something terrifying.
Yeah. It's like this primal instinct. We try to deny the things that we don't understand, the things that really scare us. And, well, in horror movies, that denial usually leads to more horror.
Like the calm before the storm. You just know something awful is about to happen. And the characters are totally clueless. Speaking of things changing, the film takes us from this, like, warm and sunny atmosphere during Hutter's travels and throws us into this stark, isolated, cold Count Orlok's castle.
Oh, yeah, that shift is so important. It kind of reflects the whole point of the movie, Like, at first, it's all mysterious and exciting, but the deeper you go, the more you realize, you've walked straight into a nightmare.
And one scene that just sticks with you is that ghost ship sequence. Count Orlok, he's just moving among the coffins. You can't even see him. And those POV shots, I mean, you're right there with him in the heart of the terror. It's chilling.
Murnau was so ahead of his time with those point of view shots. By putting the audience, like, literally in the character's shoes, he just pulls you right into the fear. Really effective.
The reviewer brought up a point about the film, how some of the things that make it so creepy were actually like accidents. Back then, film rates weren't as smooth as they are now, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the movements seem jerky and unnatural.
Yeah, it's kind of wild how those limitations actually work for the movie, It makes it all dreamlike and unsettling, which just adds to the creepiness.
And speaking of unsettling, Count Orlok's powers.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Forget about all that superhuman strength stuff, shape-shifting. Orlok's thing is, it's all in the mind. It's all mental control, psychic influence. Which, honestly, might be even scarier than physical threats.
I think so, yeah. Physical threat, you can at least try to fight back. But when it messes with your mind,
Yeah.
when it's about your sanity, that's terrifying. It's like this primal fear of losing control, of being completely overtaken by something you don't understand.
It's a fear that's, I think, relevant even today, And what's great is Murnau doesn't shy away from exploring those dark themes. The reviewer even praises the film for how seriously it takes the subject. Like, it's not just cheap thrills. That's why it works, I think. It treats evil with, like, real weight, realism, makes
Yeah.
the horror resonate on a deeper level. Doesn't just feel superficial.
And to make things even creepier, they use that German expressionism style with all the distorted shapes, those long shadows.
Yeah, German expressionism. It's not just about how it looks, It's about conveying a feeling, like a psychological state. That sense of unease, of a world on the edge, those distorted shapes, they become a reflection of what's happening inside the characters, the darkness that's closing in.
It's like a visual language that speaks to our deepest fears. And that brings us to another interesting point about Orlok's powers. They're not your typical vampire powers, are they?
Nope, not at all. No fangs and capes here. His power is all about getting inside people's heads, manipulating them from within. like a puppet master.
Yeah, pulling strings from the shadows,
Yeah.
bending people to his will without them even realizing it.
Exactly. And this kind of psychological terror, we've talked about it, it's probably more frightening than anything physical, right? Because it preys on our deepest vulnerabilities. That fear of losing control, of being consumed by something we don't even see coming.
The reviewer points out this one really disturbing scene where Ellen, Hutter's wife, she starts losing control of her mind, her body too. And Orlok is miles away. Like there's this invisible connection between them. She's totally helpless. It's this like really unsettling look at mental manipulation and psychic influence, you know?
Yeah, it gets under your skin. And it shows that the film is about more than just blood and monsters. It's about a creature that wants to completely dominate your being, your thoughts, your desires, your will.
It's like Ed's saying the real monsters, the ones we need to fear. They're not always the ones with fangs and claws, but the ones who can manipulate us from the inside. The ones who can turn us against ourselves.
That's a chilling thought. And it's even more relevant today, don't you think? With all the information out there, the technology, it's easy to be manipulated.
Like Nosferatu, even though it's a silent film from a century ago, it's tapping into some very modern anxieties, the fear of being influenced, controlled by unseen forces.
Exactly. It's a reminder that the fight between, like, light and shadow, knowledge and ignorance, it's a fight that never really ends. It goes beyond time and technology.
Yeah, it really is unsettling to think about how those themes, that mental control and the seductive nature of evil, how they play out today. You know, I mean, we're just constantly hit with information, persuasive messages, everyone trying to change how we think and what we do. It's almost like Orlok's influence, just digital, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Think about the rise of all this propaganda, the fake news you see online, all that, the way people can use technology to shape how we view the world. It's subtle, hard to even see, like Orlok's influence, you know? He gets to you without you even realizing it.
He's like, she's found a new hunting ground. Not a creepy castle, but the internet.
Exactly, and think about it. Like, Orlok used the promise of riches, power, all that to lure his victims, right? Well, today it's the same thing. The people who want to control us, they appeal to our desires, our fears, what makes us insecure. It's a trap.
Yeah.
Especially when it looks like something good, something fun.
Like that saying, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. You know, if something seems appealing, enjoyable, we don't really question it.
Right. And that's why it's more important than ever to really think critically, especially now with so much information flying around. We got to be aware of how people can influence us, question the information we see, look deeper, you know, think about the motivations behind it all.
So Nosferatu, it's not just a spooky vampire movie. It's like a warning for the internet age. Be vigilant. Think for yourself and resist the whispers of the people trying to control us, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely an allegory, a warning about blind faith, about just blindly obeying, you know? It's telling us to be critical, to be wary of the people who want to use us.
Like Hutter, remember. He finds that book, right? The one that explains like everything about vampires. But he just ignores it, doesn't take it seriously, which shows, I think, that knowledge isn't always enough. You need the courage to actually accept what you learn and do something about it.
Absolutely. Knowing stuff isn't, it's not enough. You got to be willing to face those uncomfortable truths, even when they make you question everything.
The film is saying, I think, that knowledge is power, but only if you actually use it, right? If you just ignore the warnings, pretend the danger isn't there, that's how they get you.
And that theme, you know, knowledge versus ignorance, it ties into how they use light and shadow in the film. It's not just for the atmosphere, right? It's about a deeper struggle.
I see what you mean. It's the way Murnau uses the light, the darkness, those contrasts. It's like a visual representation of knowledge and ignorance fighting.
Yeah.
You know? Like clarity versus deception.
Exactly. The shadows are the unknown, the things we're too scared to face. The light, though, is knowledge, awareness. It's like the power to fight back against the shadows, the fear, the manipulation.
So the film's giving us a choice.
Right.
Either we embrace the light, search for knowledge, and actually fight the things trying to control.
Or we stay in the dark. Let the shadows grow and just consume us. It's a powerful metaphor, you know? Especially now with all this information overload, all the digital influence.
It's wild how a film made 100 years ago can still feel so relevant. It really shows the power of good storytelling. Those basic themes, light and dark, knowledge versus ignorance, good versus evil, those are always going to matter.
Yeah, Murnau wasn't just making a scary movie. He was exploring, human psychology, how we deal with fear, temptation, all that eternal struggle between good and evil, light and dark.
Themes that are always going to matter,
Yeah.
no matter what happens in the world.
At its core, Nosferatu is about being human, about our weaknesses, what we want, and the choices we make when we're faced with, well, the darkness inside us and the darkness in the world.
And those choices, those moments where we decide to either fight back or give in, they really show who we are. It's a powerful message that goes beyond just, horror movies.
Well said. As we keep talking about Nosferatu, it's good to remember it's not just, entertainment. It's a work of art that makes us really think about the world, to question what we see and hear, and maybe even more importantly, to look inside ourselves and face the shadows there.
Absolutely. We got to remember, even though the movie ends with Orlok defeated, the fight against the darkness, that never really ends. It's a constant struggle. We got to stay vigilant, be aware, and have the courage to embrace the light. But before we go further with that, I wanna go back to something the reviewer said about Orlok's powers. It's not just mind control or psychic influence. There's also this contagion, this darkness that spreads to everyone around him.
Right. It's almost like Orlok himself is a virus, like a corrupting influence that spreads like a disease. And this idea of contagious darkness, of evil spreading like that, it really speaks to our fears today.
Like that scene, right, where Orlok arrives in Wisborg on that ship. He doesn't just bring his own evil. It's this wave of death, despair that just washes over the town. It's a scary reminder of how fast darkness spreads, how easily fear and panic take over, especially when people are alone, when they're vulnerable. Makes you think, if Murnau was making Nosferatu today, how would he show that spreading darkness? What would that contagion, what would it look like in our world? All connected like we are now.
Oh, that's a good question. Imagine Orlok not in some castle, but online, spreading his influence through the internet.
Yeah, yeah. So instead of some physical plague, you'd be like a virus of bad information, fake news, propaganda, all that stuff. Just creating chaos.
Exactly. He could, I don't know, maybe he'd mess with those algorithms on social media, create those deep fakes,
Yeah.
and use how we act online, our weaknesses there, to turn people against each other, create this atmosphere of fear where no one trusts anyone.
It's a pretty disturbing thought, but it does feel relevant, doesn't it, to what's happening right now? It's like Nosferatu, even though it's so old, it's got something to say about the dangers of the internet.
Yeah, for sure. It's reminding us that this fight against darkness, against manipulation, it's not just a thing of the past. It's happening now. And it changes as technology changes, as how we communicate changes,
And like the people in Wisborg, they had to come together to fight Orlok, right?
Right.
We need to do the same thing. Figure out how to resist that manipulation online, protect ourselves from all that misinformation.
It's about thinking critically, understanding how the media works, and building a sense of community, sharing that responsibility. We got to be aware of how people try to manipulate us online, and we got to support each other in figuring out what's true and what's not.
So Nosferatu, it's not just some horror flick to scare us. It's like it's telling us to wake up.
Yeah.
Telling us to be more careful, to think for ourselves, and be active in fighting back against the darkness.
Yeah, it's empowering in a way. It's saying that even though things have changed so much since the 1920s, the power to beat evil, that's still inside each of us.
Well said. And I think that's a good place to wrap things up.
Yeah, I think so.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Nosferatu.
Always a pleasure.
And remember, keep those lights on, stay curious, and never forget, we're stronger together.
Until next time.